In this video tutorial, we will explain how to fill in a UFile tax return for married couples or for families with children. This information is specifically made for Dalhousie University international students who are currently living in Canada. Before we begin to fill in the UFile software, we will first need to ensure you have the correct tax receipts. So make sure that you know what tax receipts you're supposed to have by watching our video, Tax Receipts and How to Find Them. You will also need to ensure that you've already created a UFile tax account. To create a UFile tax account, you can go to ufile.ca. For more instructions, you can watch our video on how to create a UFile tax account. Once you have your receipts and you have your UFile account, you can log in. I've already logged in and I'm ready to go. So to begin with, if I wanted to start a new tax return, I would click on 2020 Go because that's the year I first came to Canada. I've already started, so it's saved for me. So I'm going to click Launch to open it up. But if it's your first time doing this, you want to make sure that you select the correct tax year from the list and then you would click Go. So now I have my tax return ready and I'm going to show you how I filled it out. So from the very beginning, you will be taken to the identification page. In the identification page, you would have to fill out all the rows. So you would need to type in your name in where it says first name and last name where it says last name. Now, the Canada Revenue Agency already has some of your information when you registered for a social insurance number. So you want to make sure that you use the same name that you used when you registered for your social insurance number. If you're not sure what that name is, you want to find the letter that you received from Service Canada that has your name and social insurance number on it. If for any reason that the name on that letter and your actual name does not match, you should send an email to the International Centre for us to verify those details. But for the time being, you're going to type in your name, first name, last name, and then your social insurance number. Make sure you've typed your social insurance number correctly. Then you would enter your date of birth. And here you would enter the province where you lived in December 31st, 2020. For most of you, that should be Nova Scotia. If for any reason you were living in a different province, please make sure that that province was actually your province of residence and not just the province where you were staying because of the December holiday break. It should be the province where you are currently living.
Call from 902465853.
Then you have to select your marital status. If you are married or in a common law relationship, you should select common law spouse or married. If your marital status changed, that is, you had a different status, say, for example, you were single and you got married in 2020, you would need to select that there was a change. However, if you've already been married prior to 2020, you don't need to indicate that there was a change. So I shall leave this as no change. And then finally, you select the gender that is appropriate to you. Then you click Next. Once you click next and you've indicated that you're married, you now have the option to decide what kind of information you're providing for your spouse. If your spouse is living with you in Canada, you should select Complete Information Recommended. If your spouse is not living with you in Canada, you should select Net Income Only. My spouse is with me in Canada, so I will select Complete Information, and then I click Next. In the next slide, you have to put in your mailing address. So I put in my apartment number, my street number, and my street name. I don't have a post office box, so I skip this section. And I don't have a rural route, so I skip this section. I do have a city, and I've typed that in. I've also indicated my province, and then I've indicated my postal code. Now, you may be wondering, I have a B3 number, but I'm not sure if it's a post office box or a postal code. Your postal code is about 3 digits in total. So anything that's 3 digits is definitely the postal code. And for Nova Scotia, they typically begin with a B. I would only type in something in the care of box if my mail was going to somebody else that wasn't me. So, say for example, I lived in a house with somebody else and that person's name is on the mailbox, I might put their name in. But my mail is going directly to me, so I don't need to fill this in. The next part asks for information about my residence. It says here if your province or territory of residence changed in 2020, enter the date of your move. I did not move, so I don't need to enter in a date. So this is blank. If you moved from a different province, say for example, you were living in New Brunswick in January, from January to April in 2020, and you moved to Nova Scotia, you would have to indicate the date that you moved into Nova Scotia. If your current province of residence is different from your mailing address, you would indicate on this field. However, my province is the same, so I'm not putting anything here. And my home address is the same as my mailing address. So I've indicated yes here. Finally, I type in my phone number and then I hit next. In this section, I need to indicate more information about myself. It asks me for my language of correspondence on my tax return. I want it in English, so I'll leave it as English. And it asks if I'm filing the tax return for the very first time. This is my first tax return, so I'm indicating yes. If it wasn't, I would put no. The next question asks, did you own foreign property in 2020 with a total cost of Canadian $100,000 or more? This is property in my home country or another country that I've lived in. If I own this property and it's a total value of 100,000 Canadian dollars or more, I would indicate yes, but I don't own any property, businesses, or any assets in my country or any other countries. So I'm putting no. The next question is asking if I sold a principal residence. So if I sold a house or an apartment in 2020, I did not sell anything, so I'm indicating no here. And then the other question is asking if I'm an officer or a servant of another country, such as a diplomat or a family member of such person. I am not a diplomat, so I'm indicating no, nor are any of my family members diplomats. The next question is fairly straightforward. Do you have Canadian citizenship? You're an international student, so you should indicate no here. The next section is email notifications from the CRA. Now, this section asks for your information if you want to receive email notifications on your online CRA account. I do not have an online CRA account because this is the first time for me doing a tax return. Therefore, I will indicate no. However, if you have done tax returns in the past and you have gone to the Canada Revenue Agency website and created a My account, you're probably already receiving email notifications there. So you can indicate yes. You will need to put your email address as well. However, for anybody filing their tax return for the first time, you can leave it as no. Then you're going to hit next. The next screen is the electronic filing net file. This screen is asking if I would like to send my tax return via UFile online. I want to do this, so I will indicate yes. For most of you, it's already going to be set to yes. So you really don't need to touch anything here on this screen. The next is an autofill option. I do not recommend that you click anything here. Um, if you are doing a tax return for the first time, you have nothing to autofill. So you can just skip this section and hit next. If you have used UFile in the past or any other NetFile program, you may indicate yes that you want to autofill, but that's if only if you have done tax returns using that in the past. For most of you, I would suggest you simply click next. And finally, the express notice of assessment option. If you would like to receive your notice of assessment in express, you can indicate yes here. However, it's really not necessary. So I would simply advise you to just hit next and skip this screen entirely. Now we get to the interview. This is the section where we tell the software what tax receipts we have and what our tax situation is. So I'm going to go through the section box by box so you'll know which of the items that you need to indicate a check mark next to or ones that you don't need to indicate. So, first off, is your specific situation. So, if you've never had a job and have no income to report, then you can indicate a check mark here. So, if you don't have a T4 or a T5 or a T4A, you can click this box. However, if you have had income and you have these tax receipts like a T4, you shouldn't be clicking this box. The next one is the section saying immigrant, emigrant, non resident taxpayer. This is specifically for people who have entered Canada or left Canada. If this is your first time doing a tax return, you should have this box checked off so that you'll be able to enter the date of when you entered Canada. The next box is a tax return for a deceased person, so nobody should be clicking this. And the next is a tax return for a status Indian. Now, status Indian is specific to Indigenous people of Canada. So if you're an international student from India, this does not actually pertain to you, so you can skip this section. The next one is prison in 2020. So I'm not in prison, so I'm not checking this off. And the next part is asking if this is prepared by a legal representative or guardian. It's not. I'm doing my tax return for myself, so I don't need to check this off. And then I proceed to my next section, employment and other benefits. This one is asking if I have employment income and employment insurance benefits, and it indicates here the name of the receipts T4, T4E, RL6. I have a T4, so I'm checking this box off. The next one is social assistance workers' compensation. I don't have any of these tax receipts like the T5007, so I'm not checking this box. Union or professional dues not on T4 slips. I don't have these receipts, so I'm not checking this box. Employment expenses. I don't have this, so I'm not checking this box. And GSC or QSC rebate on employment or partnership expenses. I don't have this or any of the appropriate receipts, so I leave this blank. For most international students, they will also probably not have any of the receipts from social assistance through GSC or QSC. The next section is asking for pension income, other income, and split pension income COVID 19 benefits. So if you have any of these receipts, like the T4A, the T4A OAS, T4AP, T4ARCA, T4RSP, T4RIF, or the T1032, you should check this box off. Some international students may have this box checked off because they have a T4A, either because they've received a scholarship, bursary, or fellowship, or they received some COVID 19 benefits. If you have this receipt, check off this box. The next is rental property or income. Now, this isn't referring to people who are renting, as in they are paying rent to an apartment owner or a landlord. This is specifically for people like the landlords who are already renting. So, if you're renting your apartment and you're paying somebody else, you don't need to check this box off. If you have any questions about what these boxes may mean, you'll know that there's a blue arrow. If you clicked on it, it would actually explain to you what the information it is that you're looking for. So if you ever get confused, you can always check on one of these blue marks for more information. The next section is investment income and expenses. And again, I check my receipts to see if I have any of the receipts to apply here. So I do have a T5, so I've checked this section off, but I don't have any of these other receipts, so I'm going to leave them blank. The next section is self-employment. I am not self-employed, so I'm going to leave this blank. If you are self-employed and you want more information, you can check off the blue arrow here for more information. And if you've been earning income, for example, for something like a YouTube video, you may want to put that earlier in this section up here other, where it says employment income. And that is because self employment refers specifically to people who are full time self employed. So if you're gaining stuff for social media and it's not your full time job, you really shouldn't be entering any self employment income here. It should go in the same section with the T4s. The next section is the student. So if you have a tuition receipt like a T2202, you should check this off. So most international students should make sure that they've checked off this section. The next section is common tax deductions. So it says here medical expenses. I do have those, so I've checked those off. Donations and federal political contributions. I've donated to a charity, so I've checked this off. And then the other section is RRSP, HBP, or LLLP. I don't have any of these, so this is not checked. The next section is parents and children's, referring to alimony or support payments, universal child care benefits, and this is the specific receipt RC62. Childcare special cases. So this is specific to children with special needs. So if your child is not special needs, you shouldn't be checking this box off. And again, if you have more questions about what constitutes special cases, you can definitely click here and it will tell you what are special cases or what aren't. There are other sections that I don't have any information for, like tax paid by installments and tax transfer. Moving expenses, repaid amounts to government, other deductions, including school supply and home buyer's amount. School supply, again, is for very special cases, and most international students, it doesn't apply here. So you don't need to check this off. Adjustment request for a tax return. So this is if you file a tax return and but there was a mistake on it or was missing information and you need to go back, you could check this box off, but I don't need to do it at this point, so I'm leaving this checked off. And then finally, carry forward amounts. If you've done your tax return from previous years and you have information to carry forward, you could select carrybacks, minimum tax carry forwards, or simply just prior year information. If you had a basic tax return last year and you submitted it, I would only suggest that you check off prior year information. If this is your first time doing a tax return, you don't need to check off anything in this section. So once you have checked off all the boxes that apply to your situation, you're ready to progress to the next step. So you can hit next. So because this is my first time doing a tax return and I entered Canada in the year 2020, I need to put in my information. So you would click this box. I've already clicked it, so I'm not going to click it again. Rather, I'm going to go into the section that I've already filled. When you click the plus sign, you're going to see the same page here. So in immigration to Canada, you want to put the date that you entered Canada. This would be the date that is on the issue date section of your very first study permit, or it's on the entry stamp of your passport. So if you're not sure what the date is, check your passport and look for that entry stamp that you received when you first came to Canada as an international student. If you have more than one study permits, you want to look at the very first study permit you received when you entered Canada as an international student. And in the issue date section of that study permit, you will find the date. So you can look on either the passport or the study permit. Then the next section is asking for my net income while living in Canada with my spouse. So this is the amount that I had. It's the amount on my T4 because that's the total income I had while I was living in Canada. So I've entered that amount. If you are working, you should check your own T4s or other receipts from when you were living in Canada to see what your income was. The next section is asking for Canadian source income earned when you were not a resident of Canada. This means any income that I got from a Canadian source before I came to Canada. Um, so I did not work for any Canadian companies or received any income from a Canadian company when I was not a resident of Canada, so before I came to Canada. So this amount here is zero. If you did receive any sort of Canadian source income, you would need to indicate it here. The next section is asking for Canadian source income earned when I was not a resident of Canada. Um, The next section is referring to Canadian source income plus foreign source income earned when you were not a resident of Canada. So this is income earned before I came to Canada when I was in my home country. So I've put in my home country of Nigeria here, so you can type in your home country as well. And then you need to indicate how much money you earned. So, if you had a job in your home country before coming to Canada, you would need to calculate the total amount of money earned so you can check your own pay stubs or pay receipts from your home country, add them all together, and you would enter the total amount. Now, make sure that once you have the total amount, you do a conversion to convert it to Canadian dollars. We recommend that you use the Bank of Canada currency converter, and you can do so by just Googling Bank of Canada currency converter, and you'll be able to get the website link, and then you can find your country's currency and convert it to Canadian dollars. I was not working in any job in my home country, so my amount is zero. And once I have that information, you can click next. The next section is T4. So this is where you enter the information from your T4 slip. To do so, you would need to click the plus sign. And then using your T4 slip, you would want to enter the information over here. I've already entered information in the T4 slip that I've received from payments I got being a TA at Dalhousie University. So I'm going to show you how I did that. So I basically looked carefully at my T4 receipt and I filled in the information from my T4 receipt right here in the UFile software. So for example, on my T4, I have all of these different boxes and they have these little numbers next to them: 14, 16, 17, 18, 22, and so forth. So if I wanted to enter this information onto the UFile software, I would enter the amount that's placed in a specific box. So for example, my box 14 here is 7877.92. Therefore, I enter the exact same amount, 7877.92, in the box on the software max marked 14. And that's essentially all you really have to do. Look for the box on your tax receipt and then enter that exact amount onto the UFile software. And that's it. Now, you want to make sure when you're entering this information that you're typing in the numbers accurately and carefully. And you want to make sure that you're putting in the cents as well. So don't make sure that you type in your point. And you also only want to put in the information that is actually printed on your T4. So for example, my UFile software is asking for some information in box 20. But when I look on my T4 receipt, I don't have any information entered in box 20, and that's perfectly fine. Not all the boxes on your T4 will be filled out or have information in them. You should only concentrate on moving the information that's already filled in. So for me, I only have box 14, 16, 18, and 22 filled in on this T4. Therefore, on my U file, I only have boxes 14, 16, 18, and 22 filled out here. So make sure that you filled out the appropriate information according to your T4. And once you filled it out correctly, you simply hit next. And that's it. You filled out the information for your T4. If you have more T4s and you want to add them in, all you have to do is go back to your navigation towards the left-hand side of the screen, click T4 and employment income, and hit the plus sign again to enter another T4. I only have one T4, so I don't need to do this. I'm going to go ahead and hit next, and that takes me to my T4A page. Just like before, I'm going to hit the plus sign to enter information from my T4A. I've already filled out one T4A, so I'm going to show you how I did that. So on this section, I got my T4A as a scholarship from Dalhousie University, so I type in Dalhousie University over here. And then on my T4A, I only have one box filled in. So this is my T4A right here, and I have box 105, the amount $7,300. So I have to find box 105 on my UFile software. However, when I look on my UFile software, it's not easily identifiable. What you want to do is you want to scroll down to the section called Other Information. And then when you're in Other Information, you click on the drop down menu and you find box 105 right here, Scholarship, Bursaries, and Fellowship. With scholarship, bursaries, and fellowship, I've entered the amount next to it, and that's all I really need to do for my T4A. Now, I have a second T4A, so I had hit the plus sign to create a second row. My T4A comes from my Canada Emergency Student Benefit that I received, and so I would do the same thing as my other T4A, where I would look for the box, and the box here is indicated as box 198, the amount of $1,000. So I go back to my UFile software. On my drop down menu, I found box 198, click that, and then I entered the amount of $1,000. And that's it. I filled out both my T4As in this section. So now that I'm done with T4As, I hit next. My next receipt is a T5 receipt. So to fill this in, I would hit the plus sign and it would take me to this screen. And just like with my T4 and my T4A, I'm going to look at my receipts and simply fill in the information that the U file is asking for. So I've put the name of the company that issued the T5 receipt. And on my T5, I only have one box filled in. That's this box here, box number 13 with the amount $100. So all I would need to do is find box 13 on my U file. And when I scroll down, it's right here. So I've entered $100. And that's all I need because there's nothing else on my T5. So I hit next. I don't need to fill in anything in the other income section. So I would hit next, and I would encourage you to hit next as well. And I don't need to fill in anything for the RC210 because that doesn't apply for me, so I hit next. This next section takes me to my medical expenses. Now, this is only for somebody who had a medical receipt for a huge expense that they paid for and it wasn't covered by their insurance. If you had an expense and you submitted the receipt for that to the Dal Student Health Plan office and you got reimbursed, you shouldn't be entering that same receipt information in this section. However, if you paid for something yourself, then you can enter that by hitting the plus sign next to the term medical expenses, and it would take you to this page. On this page, you would need to put the date of your medical expense, a description of the medical expense, and the amount, total amount on your receipt. So for me, I did a procedure in November 16th, and it was for my vision. I had to purchase special medication. And so I've typed that in as my description and then I've put in the amount on my receipt. And that's it. If I had multiple receipts, I would hit the plus sign and I would enter information from another receipt over here. The other sections are for medical expenses not available in my area. So if I had to do a special medical expense or purchase from somewhere that was not in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I had to go somewhere else to get it, I would put the information for that in here. And then if I had attendant care costs or wheelchair costs, or moving expenses for functional dwelling, I would put that information here. But I don't have any of that, and most international students don't have any of that. So you can just click next to proceed. The next section is for charitable donations. So I do have a donation that I gave to a church and I got a receipt for that. So I would hit the plus sign and that would take me to this page in which I would enter the total amount on my receipt, the organization that I gave it to. So for me, this was the Red Cross, and it was a money gift. And if I had any other donation receipts, I could hit the plus sign here, and that would create more fields for me to put in more information from those receipts. This is the only donation receipt I have, so I'm going to click next. And now I'm at the tuition section. So here is where I enter the information from my Dalhousie University T2202 receipt. I would do so by clicking the plus sign, and that would take me to this section. And I would need to enter the information from my T2202 receipt onto the UFile software. So my T2202 receipt looks like this. So I have two boxes I need to fill in. So box 22, which indicates 4, and box 23, which indicates 9865.00. So on my U file, I've already filled this out. In box 26, I've put that 9865.00 amount, and in my description box, I simply just typed Dalhousie University. Then in my box 25, I put the amount of 4. Some of you may have boxes for 24 filled out. You want to make sure you put it in the number of months of part-time post-secondary studies, box 24 right up here. There's another box 24, but that was specific for people who were suffering from a major functional deficiency. So don't enter the amount in here, unless of course a major functional deficiency applied to you, and you could click on major functional deficiency here to figure out what that means. But for most students, their part-time studies should be entered into the first box 24 amount if they had it. I don't have any in my box 24. It's not on my T2202. See, box that's totally empty. Box 24 is totally empty right here. I just have the box 25. So that's the reason why I only filled this in. And then I hit next because this is my first time doing a tax return. However, some of you may have done tax returns previously, and you probably have unused tuition and education amounts. Your total unused tuition and education amounts would be printed on your notice of assessment. If you have a notice of assessment, you want to look for that section that talks about unused tuition and education amounts. There would be two amounts there, one that is federal and one that is in provincial. So you would type in the federal amounts right in this box right here, and then the provincial amounts right in this box right here. If you're do no longer have the paper copy of your notice of assessment, but you have a CRA online account, you could find your unused tuition amounts in your CRA online account. If you don't have a CRA online account, you can create one, but again, that's only if you have already submitted a tax return. For more information about how to create a CRA online My Account, you can go to the Government of Canada website, canada.ca, click on taxes, and click on personal income tax. There's also going to be a link in the description box below. The next section is the Nova Scotia tax credits. I don't have any of the receipts that apply here, and most international students don't. So you can just click next and proceed to the next section. And the next section is where you enter your bank information. So this is where you provide your bank information so that any refund or any cash benefits you receive from the Government of Canada can go directly into your bank account. I strongly recommend this as this is a very safe way of receiving your money. If you don't put this information in, then your money will be mailed to you in a check. And not only it will take longer for you to receive, but remember that if you move or change addresses, your check will go to your previous address. So it's just safer that it goes directly to your bank account. I would hit the plus sign and it would take me to this screen. And in this screen, I would put my bank numbers. So I would need to make sure that I selected start or change direct deposit from the drop down menu. And then I would need to put the 5-digit number from my bank. This is also known as the transit number, but more commonly known as the branch number. If you're not sure what your bank branch number is, contact your bank directly, or some banks have that information on their online banking. I would also need to put in my bank's institution number, and this is a 3-digit number. Again, if you're not sure what your bank institution number is, contact your bank directly. Finally, you will need to put your account number. Now, make sure that you type in your account number carefully because, again, you want your money safely deposited directly to your bank account and not anywhere else. So please ensure that you've typed in the correct bank account number. If you're not sure what your bank account number is, you can go to your online banking or contact your bank branch directly. This section, I always advise everyone to make sure they've typed in the number as carefully as possible before hitting next. Finally, I've come to my control section, and this is where you can set particular controls for your tax return. This is automatically already set to optimize, which makes the software calculate the best possible benefits. And so I don't need to click anything here, and most of you won't need to do that either. You can, if you want, to have an estimated calculation for the GST HST credit here, but the tax return is already going to do that, so it's not really necessary for you to click it here. If you have children, you can also click here. Do you wish to have the estimated calculation for Canada Child Benefit? But I'm going to be putting in my child information later, so I'm not really going to bother with clicking this. So I'm just going to hit next. This section is the special offers for students section. So this is where you enter a special code to use the tax software for free because you are a full-time student. The code is CFS 1981. Once again, that's CFS in all caps 1981. So just type this in and then hit next. And I've come to the end for my tax information. Now, at this point, I have to enter my spouse's information, and I would do so by clicking on Add Spouse here. I've already added his information previously, so I'm just going to click his name right here. And again, remember, I'm putting in my spouse's complete information because he is here with me in Canada. So I've typed in his name, his social insurance number, and his date of birth. I've put in his province of residence and gender, and I've indicated that he has the same address as me. If your spouse is in Canada but in a different province or living in a different address, you would need to indicate no here. Just as before, I've selected what language my spouse prefers to have his tax return in. I've indicated that this is my spouse's first time doing a tax return because it is. Of course, if you've done taxes before, you would select no right here. The next section is asking about foreign property. Did you own foreign property in 2020 with a total cost of 100,000 Canadian dollars or more? My spouse does not have any property in his home country or any other countries, so I indicate no. The next question is asking about a principal residence. If we sold a house or another principal residence in 2020, the answer to that is no, so I'll select no. And my spouse is not a diplomat or a servant in another country, so I've selected no right here. The next section is asking for my spouse's Canadian citizenship. I select no. And then, just as before with me, it's asking if it wants to receive email notifications from the Canada Revenue Agency. This is the first time my spouse is filing a tax return, so I'm indicating no over here. And as with my section, I skipped the net file, the auto file, and the express notice of assessment. Takes me to my interview. And just like with myself, I would need to look at my spouse's tax receipts, and I would tell the software what tax receipts my spouse have by indicating the appropriate box. So my spouse does not have any income in 2020 and entered Canada. So I've selected these two boxes. And that's pretty much it for my spouse and I. If your spouse is a student, your spouse would have to indicate tuition over here. Or if your spouse have any of the tax receipts, like if your spouse was working, for example, they would have to select T4 and put in the information appropriately. So when I click next, it asks me to indicate the immigration status of my spouse. So I would hit the plus sign and it would take me to this screen. And there I would need to indicate the date that my spouse came to Canada. Again, I would look on my spouse's passport or and look for the entry date of when my spouse came to Canada, and that's where I would find that information. I would put the net income that I was living in Canada with my spouse. So again, that was the number on my T4. Your income may have come from different sources. So again, you would calculate that and you would put it here if you were earning income while living in Canada with your spouse. So I should say for this section, my spouse wasn't earning any income. So that's 0. And was not earning any income from employment in Canada before they became a resident of Canada. But um, when it comes to foreign source incomes, that's income from the home country, my spouse was earning some money. And I converted it from my currency to Canadian dollars using the Bank of Canada currency converter. And I entered that information here. And pretty much that's it. I don't have any other receipts to enter, and none of these situations here apply to me. I would just have to put my spouse's banking information if my spouse had a different bank account from mine. So if we share the same bank account, I put in the same numbers as on my side of the tax return. If your spouse has a different account and prefers for their benefits to go directly to them, you would put your spouse's information right here. And we're back to max back controls and it's already set to optimize. So I don't need to click anything here. And my spouse's side of the tax return is done. So this was pretty easy because my spouse didn't have any receipts. But if your spouse has receipts, you're going to need to enter the information from your spouse's receipts. Now, if you have any children, you would have to select add dependent. I've already added my dependent on here. So I'm going to click my dependent's name to show you what I did. So just as with my spouse and with myself, I have to fill in my name and a social insurance number. If your dependent doesn't have a social insurance number, it's fine. You can leave this section blank. You put in the relationship of your dependent. So for me, this is my daughter. So I've indicated this. And then I've put in their date of birth. I've put in the province and my child's marital status and indicated that my child does not have any income in 2020. I can skip autofill and express NOA just like before. And there I'm taken to the interview setup for any receipts I may have. So for my child, all I really have are daycare receipts. And of course, I have to put the entry date that my child came into Canada. So I click immigrant over here, and I've pretty much kept everything else blank. I have no other receipts or any information, and my child doesn't have any prior information. So I'm going to remove this check mark. And that's pretty much it for my child. So it indicates right here, did this dependent immigrate to Canada? I would hit the plus sign and that takes me to that screen. My child came the same time as my spouse, so they shared the same entry date. So I've put that in here. This entry date is also reflected on my child's passport. Just as before, it's again asking, was your child earning any Canadian source income whilst they were not a resident of Canada? That's no, so I've put in $0 here. And it indicates, was your child earning Canadian income plus foreign source income before coming to Canada? My child wasn't earning anything, so I've put in the name of our country, selected net employment income from the list, and I clicked 0. I have no medical expenses for my child at this time. That wasn't covered by insurance, so I'm going to skip this. I have no tuition I need to enter for my child, so I skip this, but I do have childcare. To enter information from childcare, you would hit a plus sign. I had daycare, so I would hit the plus sign here, and it takes me to this screen. So I would enter the total amount on my daycare receipt. For me, that was $2,000. I've put the name of the daycare center, Sunshine Daycare, and I've indicated the address over here. And that's it, really. The next section is amount for young children. So it asks for the number of months in 2020 that this dependent is eligible for the amount for young children. Now, if you want to know more about the eligibility criteria for your child, you can click on the question mark here to it and it explains that. Or you can also look at information on the child care benefit on the Government of Canada website, and that link is in the description box below. Then you hit next, and I don't have anything else to report for my child. So my child's tax return is done. So now that I have completed the tax return information for myself, my spouse, and my child, I would click review. If you have more dependents to add, more children, you can just click add dependent and that creates yet another section for another child. But I don't have any, so I'm going to click review. When I click review, this calculates my tax refund and what my refund is. So over here, I can see that I'm receiving a refund of $1,200. However, my spouse isn't receiving anything, and that's because my spouse didn't work in Canada, nor does my daughter, so she's not receiving anything. If I wanted to see my tax return in full, I would click on tax return up here. It says unable to calculate tax return for my child because my child is barely 2 years old, so no tax return for her. But when I click on my name, I can find my tax return with all my tax information on it. Now, if I wanted a PDF, I could just click download PDF right here and it would create a separate PDF document. But I'm going to show you a couple of main things. If you were to print your tax return and you had to send them to the Canada Revenue Agency because you couldn't send this um, online, you'd want to print just the federal condensed pages, and this is what they look like. So just look in your navigation on the left-hand side where it says federal condensed, and you'd only print out those pages. On the last page, so this is federal condensed, page 3, if I scroll down a little bit, you can see this box where it says sign here. So after you print out your tax return, you should sign the section where it says sign here before you mail your tax return in. I'm not going to do, I don't need to do this because we're going to net file the tax return, but I just wanted to show this just in case you're not able to use net file to send your tax return online. The other section you may be wondering about is GST-HST. So if I wanted to know how much GST-HST I would be getting, I would simply scroll down in my navigation on the left-hand side, click GST credit calculation, and then when I scroll down at the bottom of that particular page, I can see the amount of GST-HST credit that I would get. I also have Canada Child Care benefit information of how much money I'm entitled to because of my young child. And if I wanted to see my spouse's information, I would just click his name and see his tax return would generate, and I would look in those same sections for that information. Um, so because my spouse didn't have any income, there's not really going to be much on his receipt. No tuition, just the direct deposit information, really. So now that I have my tax returns done, the next part is to submit it online. Um, we would if you want somebody to check your tax return to make sure you've completed it correctly, I would suggest that you stop here and make an appointment with the Dalhousie International Centre, where a CVITP volunteer, that is a Canada Volunteer Income Tax Program volunteer, can review your tax return. If you're sure that you have completed your tax return correctly and you're ready to send it, you can select Net File. And on that file, you would have a section here where you could say, where you would click and it would say submit tax return. Now, because I essentially created a tax return with a fake social insurance number, it's saying that I have errors here. But if with your tax return, you using your social insurance number, you shouldn't see this error and you'll be able to submit it online. And that's how you submit a tax return using the UFile software. So if you want to make sure that somebody reviews your tax return before you send it in, again, you can just stop at tax return. Your file will be saved automatically on your UFile. So you don't need to hit save or anything at this point. You can just exit the UFile software and then you can book your appointment at the International Center. Information about how to book an appointment is available in the next video tutorial. So this brings us to the end of this video. In the next video, we will cover how to schedule a tax appointment at the International Center. You can find more tax tutorial videos on the International Center website, the Dal Student Life YouTube channel, or the International Center Microsoft Streams channel. Helpful links are available in the description box below. Thank you for watching, and we hope this video was helpful.